Hi YouTube, I'm back talking more about First and Second Amendment rights, and now moving on to Second Amendment rights um, for my Religion and Ethics series. And here's the thing with Second Amendment rights. We need to be able to protect ourselves in certain situations, to have means to protect ourselves or families. And gun ownership is one way to do that. And granted, there's the downside to that. There's the downside to it in that there can be, especially in metropolitan areas, there can be a lot of crime, there can be a lot of violence going on, and that is one reason why a lot of people who are against guns in general or want to be more stringent with gun laws, that's one of the reasons why, is they're afraid of crimes and violence and everything else. And especially people like cops, that have to deal with this kind of stuff every day, they might be a little more strict or stringent on this issue and think, well, we shouldn't have guns except for, maybe military or police. What could happen if the military police, were, say, corrupt? That would be a bad situation if they were the only ones that had the guns, that had weapons. Because what if they turned on the people? What if, there was a lot of corruption and evil going on? What if there was like martial law and, these cops or military people just decided to shoot civilians? How would we have any way of defending ourselves? What if the country was invaded? There's so many hypothetical scenarios where we might need to have a way of defending ourselves. Not only that, but a lot of people who live in the South or the Midwest or the Northwest or whatever, a lot of them hunt. Some of them do it for sport, and that is something I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But some of them do it for sport, which I don't necessarily agree with, and some do it, they do it for honest to goodness reasons. They may do it somewhat for sport, but they also use meat of the animals, to help feed their families. And so they're doing it for, for the purpose of helping their families. Some of them maybe live near the woods, or, may have run-ins with, wild animals that might attack them. So a lot of them, keep a gun for protection. Some people don't live in the big cities, and they live out in the country, and so they may not have a fancy, security system at their house. Maybe their security system is their rifle up above their door or whatever. So a lot of people will use guns for food or for security. Even in the big cities, when you have a lot of gang violence and everything, sometimes people will just have them for protection. Guys that that maybe live in in an area where there's a lot of gang violence, they maybe keep one on them for protection. Just because you never know with gang rivalry or whatever what might happen. And so they keep it on them for their protection or for their family's protection. Or you might have a young woman who works in the big city, and she works late at night, or she has a long commute or whatever, and so she needs some way to protect herself. And sometimes with rape whistles or mace or whatever doesn't quite work or doesn't do the job. Like if she really came right down to a position where she might need a gun, I think she has every right to own a gun. I think women need to be armed and need to protect themselves, in dangerous situations. I think anyone who might have threat to life or limb needs to be able to protect themselves, whether it's a gun or knife, or some other form of weapon. And granted, you can learn, self-defense skills, you can learn martial arts, but that will only help you in like regular hand-to-hand combat, so to speak. if you're dealing with someone who may be very violent, sometimes the only recourse or resource that you have is having a weapon. And if our country were invaded and there were no military, there were no police, maybe they were wiped out, how would civilians defend themselves if they weren't allowed to have weapons? So it's kind of a catch-22 situation, because yes, there are those very necessary reasons for people to have weapons. However, what people on the opposite side of the argument say is that, well, these weapons, and especially illegal weapons that people come by, we're talking about legal weapons, Second Amendment rights. But they'll use the people get a hold of a hold of illegal weapons and, commit crimes and everything else, rob banks, and get into some kind of gang violence. You never know. So they'll use that as a means to justify their argument that, that people should own guns, or if they do, it should be highly regulated. Now, on the flip side of that argument, I can see why people would think that way, especially if you had lost a friend or a family member to gang violence. If you were say a New York City cop and you saw so many crimes going on involving weapons, and you might have more reason to think that way than, say, someone living out in the country, using it to hunt deer, using their gun to hunt deer. You might be a little more defensive of your rights, your Second Amendment rights then. So it's kind of a tricky catch-22 situation with that. The problem that I have with guns is more so along the lines of hunting, also illegal activities or violence. I see a lot of, especially in the country, in the South, I see a lot of people having guns, and they use them for hunting and whatever. But with what happened in Columbine, with the school shooting at Columbine, Colorado, I believe it was, things like that, it's a pretty dangerous, tricky catch-22 situation, because on the one hand, you don't want violence, you don't want crime going on with weapons, and you don't want, excessive hunting, or whatever. That's one reason why they have hunting license, because they don't want people to overdo it and to endanger certain animal populations. One of the problems that I have with guns, just because of growing up in the South, some of my growing up was in the South, and I'm originally from Texas. That's a big thing there. I mean, lots of people, and especially in the country, more regional, in the more country areas, and the more, what's the word? Anyway, out in the country. People out in the country, a good number of them own guns. It's a fact. For whatever reasons, and most of them do it for hunting. Problem that I have is I'm not a vegetarian or anything, but when I see animal cruelty or excessive hunting, or hunting just for sport, that to me that bothers me. And I know, animals and people are two different things. I mean, it's one thing to shoot an animal for food or for sport or whatever, and to shoot a human being, So it's a little different scenario of gang violence in New York City versus, hunting with a license for the fun of it in the South somewhere. So you're part of a hunting club or whatever, where you just want to hunt for the fun of it or food for your family. I don't have a problem with people doing it so much for food. With the economy being what it is, some people benefit greatly from that. If they're able to, if they have a hunting license, they're able to go out and shoot a deer, that's meat for their family for the next few months. My brother at one point had a deer in his freezer, and it helped supplement his family's grocery bills. They were kind of tight on money at the time, and so it helped supplement whatever they were able to buy at the grocery store. They were already budgeting and cutting back and stuff. So having that deer really helped. However, a lot of the times, yes, people will use the animal for meat, but a lot of the times people will do it in a way that seems more like a sporting event, more like they're hunting for the fun of it. And one thing that bothered me growing up was seeing people with this big old deer head up on their wall, and Bambi's looking down at me and freaking me out. I'm just like a little kid. I'm like, that is not okay. It's freaking me out. What the hell? You have a deer head and a moose head and whatever else on your wall. That's not okay. So I have a problem with that. So, but on the flip side, like I said, people need to be able to, if their family is going hungry, if they need to protect themselves from any kind of violence against them or their family members, they need to have that ability to be able to do that. I think there should be strict hunting laws, yes, laws about gun ownership, within the cities, to avoid, dangerous crimes and so forth, and deadly crimes. But I think you have to keep a balance with this. I think you don't want crimes happening. You don't want people taking anything to an excess or to an extreme. And another aspect of this is, I think a lot of the people that want to enforce gun laws and so forth, or put more strict or more stringent gun laws in place, are people that are worried about a Waco kind of situation, that are worried about some militia group rising up and trying to fight the government or whatever, kind of paranoia like that. So in my view, Waco was a horrible thing to happen. I think that was the government just freaking out and attacking civilians and going overboard. I think, well, there's various different views as far as Waco and situations like that. At what point does the government need to come in and interfere or get involved in a situation? And to what degree? So I think, to me, Waco seemed like a tragedy. And it was the government's fault. That's my view on it. They came in, that somebody had some radical ideas and radical views, and they thought, oh, well, they're probably dangerous to themselves or other people, but what they did was far worse. So that's my 2 cents as far as Second Amendment rights. I think that Thomas Jefferson had a lot of quotes about this topic of people, being able to protect themselves, not just from other people, but even from their own government. Imagine if our government became so corrupt that people needed to defend themselves from the very government that's supposed to be there to protect them. What would you do if there were no gun rights, if you had no way of defending yourself? Whether it's from other countries or even your own country, you need to be able, or even just your, a burglar breaking in, or, walking down the street and someone trying to mug you, you need to be able to have that right to be able to defend yourself. But anyway, post a comment if you like, express your views, positive, negative, pro, con, just don't get hateful. And I'll be glad to hear from you soon. Thank you, and thank you for watching, and I will be posting more religion and ethics videos on other topics. very soon. Alright, have a good day.